I will call to order a regular meeting of the Wellington Board of Selectmen. It is Monday, October 3rd, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. Note that all three selectmen are present in person. The first item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. So those which is saying the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. All right. We'll give folks a couple minutes as they're coming online. Approval of minutes is the next item. In your packet, you should have two. You should have special meeting minutes August 3rd. We didn't do those last time? No. Okay. And the regular minutes from September 19th. So I would entertain a motion for the minutes from August 3rd.
Motion to approve the minutes as written.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second, any discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I
All right,
abstain.
okay, so Kelsey, I'll ask you to do a roll call vote.
Liza,
Aye.
Jim,
Abstain.
Erica,
Aye,
I was not there.
It's
so
okay.
I'm not gonna
just
vote.
the rules for hybrid or remote meeting call for a roll call.
If it's not
If it's
unanimous.
not unanimous,
Yeah.
so we always try that. Okay, the next, I would entertain a motion for the September 19th, 2022 minute.
I'll move to accept the September 19th, 2022 regular meeting minutes.
Seconded by Liza. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, the next item is present to speak. We can see everyone who's on. If you, anyone in the room present to speak? Okay, the one person in the room with us does not choose to speak at this time. Anyone online, you can raise your virtual hand. Mr. Tella, ask you to identify yourself for the record and limit your comment to 2 minutes.
Nick Tella, 49 Myrtle. I just want to state the other day, I had a meeting between Erica, Mike D'Amato, and town lawyer. It was in regards to the FOIA request I had submitted on September 9th. The majority of the FOIA was filled. However, the last portion, which states, quote, to have all emails, personal or government accounts from Erica, Mike, and John Gazowski that have been used in an official manner to conduct business between the developers and associated parties relating to the development of the 1.5 million square foot project, end quote, was never filled. The parties representing the town had stated that I never requested to have emails between the town and the developers. Again, the request stated to have all emails, and I repeat, all emails from mentioned town representatives. It also states, quote, that have been used in an official manner to conduct business between the developers and associated parties, end quote. Not once or anywhere in that request does it mention to have only emails between town representatives, which is what I was given. The request was very clear, and ironically, the only people that seem to have misunderstood are the people that the emails were requested from, along with the town lawyer. That's it for now.
Thank you. Anyone else present to speak? All right, going once, going twice. We'll move forward. I will take a point of privilege and clarify for the record that the FOIA request was completed in full, and all items that pertain to the FOIA request were provided to Mr. Tella. And that was verified to him by our town attorney. So I would like that noted for the record. All right, item 5, correspondence. You have a list of correspondence in your packet. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll move forward to first selectman status report.
I do have one question
Yeah.
on the correspondence. This is in regards to a vacancy on a board, Region 19 Board of Education. And I know that's determined at town meeting.
Correct.
But does the correspondence get voted in? How does that?
It does not
marry up with
go
all?
to town meeting. I mean, this is not a record for the town meeting.
Okay.
So, when we get to that call, I can answer any questions about that process.
Sorry.
Okay. First Selectman status report. I'll give you some updates on projects. The steep grant for the Old Town Hall septic. Need to hold the town meeting to appropriate the funding now, so that we can go out to bid with an RFP on the project. So that request first needs to go to Board of Finance. They'll be sending communication from my office to the Board of Finance to authorize, ask them to recommend the appropriation and asking this board to call a town meeting. So we'll do that. In order to spend the funds, we actually have to have them appropriated by the Board of Finance first. So we've worked with our business manager, make sure we have the correct language we need and make that request of the Board of Finance. The school building committee met last Wednesday. The phase 1 environmental work was completed. They're still waiting for the formal report. However, they're still recommending phase 2 on both the Hall School site and the private site. The committee is still preparing for community meetings to be held in the near future. And the next meeting is this Wednesday, October 5th, at 6:30. And I believe, Kelsey, do you know if that one is completely on Zoom? Or if it's hybrid?
This week.
Yeah,
I can double check.
okay, double check. I know it's at least remote. It's possible to be hybrid. So I encourage you to check the website for that. The lot set project, which is the Route 32 River Road sidewalk project, for a better description. We are in the survey and design phase. The survey is complete and working on design, and we expect the design plans to be completed by the end of October. And when I say expect, we hope. SBC will be remote. Thank you, Kelsey. Truck leases, we're still waiting for the one truck for Public Works Director. We have no current update. No, I give them a look across the room, still no update. Which again means they haven't canceled our order for a 2022 vehicle. So with that pricing, so we'll just wait and see. ARPA Commission met today and discussed the expenditures to date. We're working towards possibly closing a couple of small projects. There are several projects that are still in the process that won't be completed for some time. For example, the summer camp supplement. While summer camp is over for this year, the project encompasses multiple years, so that project will be open for an extended period of time. So we also received notice we had received prior notice of the money expected today. During the meeting, the business office received notice that the tranche of funding will be deposited into our account tomorrow, October 4th. So due to that, the funding application process will reopen to further allocate the remaining funds. So if everything that's unfunded and the balance that has not been requested are fulfilled, we'd have about $119,000 open for potential projects. That's before items close and those monies go back. So we discussed, I don't know that we put a time limit on it. We discussed at least a month of the application process being open so that groups could have an opportunity to put in any new requests to be considered. So I'm happy to say I'll be happy tomorrow when I can confidently say we received the second tranche of funding, which was just over $540,000. COVID-19. Oh, sorry. Our next meeting will be Monday, October 17th at 1:30. COVID-19 updates. The vaccines are no longer included in the report that we pull information from. But our COVID case number is a total of 894, which is an increase of 14 cases since our last meeting. The new bivalent booster shot is available at all Eastern Highlands Health District clinics. You can check their website at ehhd.org for clinic times and locations. So with that being said, we used to have quite a bit of information I could share with you and share these meetings and with our residents. Would this board still like me to update you in this same manner moving forward? It looks like right now the information we're getting is minimal and, case numbers wise. The test that, the amount of information they're tracking is much less than it used to be, but I'd be happy to consider whatever amount of update that you feel we need.
I think if there's something happen, like something unusual spiking or something like that,
Okay.
or if the schools see a really big increase, that would be important for, residents to know. So they can,
And my comments.
Take
exactly. I
precautions,
don't,
yeah.
the routine, I don't think we
Yeah.
need to talk that, but if there's a change in the trend.
Mm.
Like a spike upwards or something like that, then it's probably worth discussing.
Yep,
okay.
Giving us an update.
Great. Yeah, I mean, the reality is there was a time these numbers really had in meaning in a time. We know COVID hasn't gone away and it's not going to. So we just encourage people
All the
to.
latest thinking is that it's another seasonal.
Correct.
Event, and
Yeah,
I'm expecting probably after the holidays. Probably will be. talking
maybe,
more.
yeah, and so we'll see how that goes. So as always, we encourage you, if you're sick, stay home, monitor yourself. And think if we all think beyond ourselves, we'll keep folks healthy and safe, and that goes with anything. I think we learned during COVID with the mask on, we didn't get anything at all, so just keep that in mind. Update on town staff. We have a vacancy in our finance office. Our payroll and personnel coordinator decided to leave us. Last Friday was her last day. So we posted the position internally. It is a union position. And we'll post externally if necessary, moving forward. I'll also note that it's not steep. We received steep funds back in 2016, I think, for the last phase of the Turnpike Road project. And our former first selectwoman, Christina Milos, worked on trying to get the state to reallocate the leftover funds. When I took office, we took over the continual asking of that back in 2019. After 2 years of asking, we received authorization from OPM to utilize the remaining 347,000 and change toward the salt shed. It's now 3 years of trying to get a contract to move forward with the steep process. Kelsey and I have been working with DOT again. It looks again like they're ready to move forward with that. So we certainly need to continue, start having discussions again. That process sitting out there in limbo made us ineligible for this last round of steep. So while you may have seen a lot of towns receiving steep funds, we were deemed ineligible because of the open grants we had. We just haven't had access to funding. So it's incredibly frustrating. Part of me almost wishes they had said, no, we couldn't reallocate it, because then I think it would have made the process to get new funds a little bit easier. But this is where we sit. So we're trying to, this all happened this afternoon. So Troy and I have started preliminary conversations to circle back to the salt shed project. It can only be used for the project we asked for it to be. It can't be anything else. So we're gonna circle back and have that conversation to make sure we can make the most of the 347,000 plus that we've been authorized to use. It will mean a new contract with DOT, so it will take some time before we get there, which will give us some time. But I wanted to keep you up to date on that. All right, any comments or questions regarding that?
No, thank you.
You brought this up to our representatives, see if they can help at all.
We have authorization from OPM. We already got authorization to use it back in 2019. I have a letter from the secretary.
Yeah.
It's working with DOT, your contract then comes from DOT. And so we've been working with them continuously, and then COVID happened. And then they were changing offices, and then no one was here. And so it's a continual open communication, but there are large gaps in time.
I'm just curious. I mean,
So-
that's sounds like something that our representatives can handle.
No, I think that our office has been able to manage it
Okay.
at this point. And so we're looking forward to, today is the first time Someone at DOT has really said to us, we're going to move this forward. We're going to work on the contract. And so, we have every communication we've had with them and continue to do that. So I'm happy to say it may have taken a long time, but they're still going to make the funding available to us, which I think at the end of the day is the most beneficial to our residents. So I'll keep you updated on that process as it goes. All right, Public Works, Troy is here. Can you give us an update?
Yep, we finished Kutchko Road drainage. We picked up some trash and bulky waste that was dumped on Penny Hill. There's some 2x4s, a chair, a rug, stuff like that. Roadside mowing is still going on around town. We've started to grade some of the dirt roads for winter time. We replaced the pipe across the road on Old South Wellington that was collapsed. We fixed the catch basin in St. Moritz Circle. We fixed the basin on Cesar Road. We paved the ramp at Hall School, where their two little storage sheds are. There was a piece of plywood there and they wanted to put a ramp in. So we paved out with some asphalt. We fixed a few spots in the parking lot. We paved some washouts on the edges of the road around town. We chipped brush and trimmed trees at Village Hill Park. And we installed some new door lock sets and light bulbs in the town office. So like that.
All right, thank you. And I'll mention in my good and welfare, another project.
Does the Kutchko Road drainage, does the paving for that happen when we do Moose Meadow? Is it like all at once, or how does that work?
Well, no, it hasn't been, we'll get a price on that to do it, but I don't think we have the funds to pay the rest of Kutchko.
No, I was just, you paved over what was dug up? The drainage parts?
We're on Kutchko?
Yeah.
No, we replaced on the dirt part, we replaced all 3 cross culverts because they were metal pipe.
Okay.
So we replaced those, and then we ran an under drain from there's a catch basin. Well, we took the catch basin out and made like a swale, and we ran 300 feet of under drain. Because it gets real funky in the winter time.
Yeah.
The water leaches out. So we put an under drain on there, on the dirt part. And then on the corner, going down where it's paved, where Mochi.
That's where I was.
Yeah, so we put an under drain right there, and we raised that basin. If you can remember, there was a huge dip there before.
Yeah.
Now the basin, we brought it up, so it's not a dip anymore. And then we ran an under drain up to that.
But there's no paving that needs to be done in that area.
We paved that already.
You did that?
Yeah, we did that at the time. Yep, so that's all.
All right, thanks for clarifying.
All right. We'll move on to old business. Item A, this may seem like Groundhog's Day, the contract for a propane tank replacement. So if you recall at our last meeting, we had awarded the contract for the dog pound and DPW garage propane tank replacements to AmeriGas based on their bid. Okay, based on their bid, we had multiple bids. When we went to sign the contract with the vendor, and begin that project, AmeriGas stated to our Public Works Director that without a contract, a subsequent contract for propane, they wouldn't be able to do the work. A little bit stressful.
Would have been nice to see that in the fine print the first time around.
Right?
Zero discussion about it.
Contingency.
So at which
Yeah.
point Troy said, is there anything we can do? You bid on the project, knowing what we were asking you to do, full discussions. They said they did try. They went, put it up the chain, said no. Troy reached out to multiple other vendors and everyone said the same thing. Without a service contract, they would not be willing to do the project. Because we have a service contract for propane, they would not be willing to replace our propane tank. Our bid, the scope of work did not include this project, so we followed the procurement policy and went out to bid because it was over $5,000. So with that said, we still need to replace, both of these still need to be replaced. Again, the Public Works tank has about 65% full of propane, and the propane is used for, it's not, it'll be used for the new generator, it's not used for the current, so it's backup heat because we have a waste oil furnace that we use then. So they use minimal propane so long as the system they're using works. The dog pound, on the other hand, does not have another heat source backup. So with that said, the quantities, the cost that we had from high grade were more expensive. And so what we need to do is we need to award the contract again to someone else. But having these discussions, Troy and I discussed, the recommendation would be to move forward with awarding the contract for the dog pound and wait until the next propane bid cycle and bid the replacement at the garage and propane service for the town. So encompass it in and go ahead and get new
Yeah.
quotes for the project.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It comes with some minimal risk. So the risks are, we're putting a new generator, we're putting on a new generator in there. So if for some reason that were to be able to happen sooner, it requires propane. If we use enough propane in it that we didn't have any more, no one's going to, high grade is not going to fill it. But based on the information we're receiving, it looks like it could be some time before the tank comes in. Some time being estimated potential 66 weeks.
The
So
generator, not-
the
not-
generator,
Oh,
the generator. So if we
say.
don't, 66 weeks, so if we don't have the generator in, then we don't have to worry about using the propane for it.
Gotcha.
If it comes in sooner, something to talk about, but that with the waste oil furnace that we have now, Troy feels like it might be worth the risk to save the funds moving forward. And so with that, I'll make a motion that we can open for discussion. So I'll move to award the vendor and specifications for propane tank replacement at the Town of Willington Dog Pound to high grade gas service in the amount of $5,490.
Second.
Seconded by Liza. Discussion. I just gave you a whole lot of information.
I mean, I guess in some way it does make sense, right? Because if they're. So whoever we award the propane tank or the propane bid to, they maintain the tank. As well,
Yes.
right? Like if
Yes,
there's ever a problem. So I guess. It does make sense that you would want the same person maintaining and servicing the tanks that they're putting in. Totally get that. I do wish that they had said that on the outset, so we would have had this information. From the get-go, but I mean, I can see the logic. So I guess the question is, do we think that there's gonna be some significant advantage to waiting?
for me, it was a matter of cost, right? So remember, neither
Yeah.
of these were things that we budgeted for. Our business manager believes we have the funds within the current budget. So instead of going back and asking the town for more funds, we're able to do it this way. And I would say with that, we could still potentially move forward with that at the end of the year, right? Because we would still have the funds available, but we would put it in the scope of work for a new contract. So,
So Troy, I have a question. Who owns the tanks? Are we proposing to buy the tanks ourselves?
We
We own them.
currently, right now, the town of Wellington owns the tanks.
Right,
So what the issue is say like if we rented, say like we have the contract from year to year.
Yeah.
If say like high grade own the tanks, they would have to replace them and we would rent them. So they're not, us as the town owning the tank, no one will, and maybe I'm getting off subject, no one will take responsibility with another contract in place. So if we just had the tank and we bought the propane, just like you and I would just buy the propane somewhere where we wanted or call one, if we own the tank, it's different. We have a contract with high grade gas, or another company will not go in and basically touch their product more or less. And even though we own the tank.
that's interesting, because
Yeah.
that's always the rub with propane, right?
Right,
If
exactly.
you lease the tank, you pay top dollar for
Yes.
leasing
Yeah.
and propane, you never get a good price on everything, so.
If we right now didn't have a contract
Yeah.
and we bought the propane just from high grade or from wherever, Northeast Propane or
Yeah.
anybody, then there wouldn't be an issue. We could just call somebody and just like they would come and do it because they're not supplying, they would put the tank. But we have a contract with high grade and they will not.
So we have a contract to buy.
To buy
propane.
to buy for,
And to make, right now, high grade will maintain and fix anything that we have that's propane, that's their contract.
and they will, we will still own the new tank. So regardless of who we went with, we will still own the tank.
Because I like that shopping around.
That is
aspect,
correct.
because
So
we
we'll
own-
still be able to do that. But in the middle of a contract, nobody else would come in and replace the tank.
Because it's.
Because someone else has a contract on
And
it.
this is the one that's obviously down to like almost nothing.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, the dog hunt is, it was at 10%.
10%, like 10 to 15%.
Yeah, and again, they have no heat.
So I like the idea of waiting on
Back.
the other one. We got 65% in there. If we could go into the,
Yeah.
run into the next cycle, I think that would be great. So, okay.
All right. All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye,
Aye.
for the dog pound.
That is correct. That was the motion.
Yep.
All right. Aye. Everyone voted aye. Sorry, thank you. All right. ARPA Region 19 funding discussion. So our last meeting, we discussed potentially moving forward, only if we considered a similar program from Region 19 with our own school staff. And I had said to you, we'd, go out and work with the superintendent, get some numbers and figures so we could talk about what we would be spending from the town side. After discussing with Superintendent Stevens and knowing his feelings on the process, we actually determined that we thought there was a better idea than a bonus to individual employees in both the schools and the town. And that was to ask for funds for several events that would encompass the entire staff from everyone in town. And that actually ties into item C on this agenda. So I'm gonna talk about item C, and then we'll have to kind of talk about what we want to do with Region 19. So I'll kind of pull it all in together. As you know, with the potential ARPA project for employee retention for both the town and fire department, I'm only speaking on the town's portion now. The ARPA Commission decided to ask for this project to go to a town meeting instead of the commission voting due to potential conflicts with members of the staff being on the commission. While I still support my original request that this board moved forward to ARPA, but in light of the situation with the schools discussion and Region 19 staff bonuses, I'd rather suggest a revised project use that would come in less than the original 32,250 I had asked for. And this would allow, so I'd like to alter the amount to 20,000. And this would allow for flexibility to plan staff events for both town and Board of Ed, encompass both of them. And if the fire department have had discussions with the fire chief on his request, if they chose to move in a similar fashion, this could also potentially include some of their membership as well. And I would hope, so I'd like to ask us to consider going back to ARPA and asking for use of $20,000. And then once we have some concrete ideas and plans in place, I'd hope that we could come in well under budget for that. But just for conversation's sake, if we were to have an event with food and let's say we had 300 people total at $35 a person, I'm throwing a catering number out there. Keep in mind, I don't do catering, but we had looked at some numbers for events for the town staff in the past, and that's a good solid number. That would be about $10,000. And so that would be for one event, potentially two. I think we could do some really nice things for staff as a whole and get away from the bonus conversation that I think seem to be the most problematic. Again, while I support that, I wish we had never-ending funds to be able to give back to our staff and show how much we appreciate the work that they did. I recognize that there may be another way of looking at this. So again, Superintendent Stevens and I talked at length about this and potentially doing another use of funds, and it would encompass everybody. And show our appreciation in a different manner instead of additional cash in their paychecks. So if we wanted to go in a route like this, how would that affect what Region 19 might possibly have going on coming out of the town of Mansfield? So their proposal in Mansfield for the funding was limiting in some capacities. I believe it didn't include some department heads at the school, as well as admin staff. So transferring the same theory over here, it would leave quite a few people out. Who we know worked just as diligently as others. And that's, you know, a little bit of inequity there. And so we thought, could there be a better way? And so a holiday event and then a spring, summer event with staff. And I'm not saying they would be all together, they may be separate cohorts because place may be an issue with that large capacity. So that is my, excuse me, recommendation. Mr. Chair is there. I'll open to discussion.
So, one of the things we had talked about at the last meeting was to get an idea of numbers. So I'm guessing that during your conversation with Superintendent Stevens, like, I'm guessing we don't have numbers to look at.
I've never seen about 100 people in total and staff, and he was
Yeah.
looking at total staff about 100.
Mhm.
But he wasn't interested in the bonus portion in a conversation. And
Okay.
so that led us to start thinking of other potential ways that we could on an even scale show our appreciation to Board of Ed and town staff. And then again, I had a similar conversation with the fire chief because he has another proposal similar to ours as far as bonuses, and he's not the sole decider of that, so he'd have to take that back to his board and have the discussion. So it's possible they, you know, may rethink what they were doing. So putting those numbers together, you know, a holiday event, and you could bring, you know, your sponsor or partner. Then we'd be looking at about 300 people if everybody came, which is why I say that this $20,000 number gives us the flexibility to know, you know, kind of be at a cap and hopefully be able to come in under budget. I'll say many of our ARPA projects have come in under budget. And I would hope this is one we would be able to do something similar with.
Okay.
But still make a meaningful impact to our staff. That was the whole idea behind the bonus program I proposed.
So looking at the two agenda items in old business, sort of separating them. So it sounds like regardless of whatever happens with agenda item C, which is looking at something, an alternative process for the employee retention that we'd originally discussed, it looks like item B is sort of off the table then.
That's up for us to
The,
decide. I mean, last time everyone here had indicated if our school wasn't on board, then we probably weren't on board. But we're gonna see numbers. So, you know, saying to you right now, that's not looking like an option. Do we still want to discuss contributing a 13,000 plus to Mansfield's proposal to Region 19?
I've been uncomfortable with that. I'm still uncomfortable with that. I'd rather not.
To Region 19?
Region 19, yeah.
Okay. All right, and again, there's nothing for us to vote on. We just, you know, indicate to town manager Mansfield, who reached out, that at this point, we're
not
we're looking
prepared
to go in a
Not
different.
been moving in that direction.
Right,
Yeah.
correct. Okay.
So then I do have a follow-up question, sort of like my 2-part / 3-part /
Yeah.
4-part question. So then, given that, so the Region 19 thing off the table, and then reopening the conversation about an employee retention. Have you asked, or has anybody asked the town staff what might be an activity or an event or a thing? Because that would contribute to positive employee morale and help with retention. I mean, it may very well be a nice holiday party,
Yeah.
but it may be something.
So what I did to start was discuss with a couple, you know, kind of a focus group, if you will. I proposed my plan and potential change and got some feedback from them. And the feedback was positive. While they certainly would appreciate the bonus we were talking about. Moving this project to town meeting, I have faith that our residents would see the effort that our staff gave, but what I don't want to see, and we don't lead the discussion at town meeting, right? It belongs there and then there's no, we don't really have control over that. And I'm not gonna lie, I have concerns about town meeting turning into a discussion of performance evaluation, if you will, of our staff. That's concerning to me. It's concerning to staff. I will tell you, many of them were uncomfortable with that. And they are well aware that there are many in our community who support them and the job that they do here. But sitting in the town meeting where they're discussing potentially discussing your performance and effort during COVID and how many hours did you work and did you really do anything? I'm not sure that would at all get to the heart of the proposal I brought forward. And I don't want to see ill will between our staff and our townspeople. I think that would not benefit anyone. And so again, I'll call them our focus group, certainly understood that and they're not comfortable with that town meeting portion of this, because it could be the discussion is simple and quick and votes on just the retention bonus, or that the conversation turns and it's, up to the moderator of that question to determine, to lead the conversation. So I didn't ask about like an open-ended, what would you like, but propose what I was planning. And it was met with positive feedback. With that said, we could take these dollars and then have a more open discussion before we actually plan something, which I think, might be a beneficial idea. Bill was going back to his staff to kind of do the same thing. So, but, it's a tough
And
call.
my concern is if you, so you did bring it to town meeting, right? You are going to invite it open and people are gonna be relating their experiences. They're gonna say like, well, I had to work through it. I had to go in, my wife's a first responder, my husband's a first responder. You're gonna hear all those things.
Yeah,
And I didn't get a bonus, so I had to go through, you hear all of that. It's all that's gonna be put on the table.
at the expense of our staff.
And it may not be helping what you're ultimately trying to do, which is you're trying to
That is correct.
employee morale
That is correct.
and retention. So that might not be a good. That was the whole thing I'm grappling with item C there. I mean, you obviously want to work on that, and those are important things to work on, but that the ARPA and going through that methodology might not be the best vehicle. I don't know.
Right, so this would be different than an employee bonus. This wouldn't be, an individual
It's a group thing. Yeah.
gift too, right? It would be something that staff could benefit from, similar to other items in ARPA that benefited different staff. So I think this could be handled through ARPA. And would certainly encourage them to have that discussion. It's the open discussion about the bonus process as it sits and as it was requested in the town meeting forum. That yes, Jim, I have many concerns, and so does our staff. I did, while I voted for it to move in this manner to town meeting, and I said this at ARPA, I did so with hesitancy because I still believe in acknowledging our staff and the work that they did and how their job has changed since COVID. But what I'm willing to do is instead of putting them potentially in an incredibly uncomfortable situation, take another look at how we achieve the same goal without a bonus in their paycheck. So again, and still these items, whatever we would do with this potential 20,000 and in events for them it's still the goal. What that looks like could be determined by staff within a reasonable price point that they're recognized. That's really my end goal and result and boost morale and what we want to achieve and maintain the great working relationship between our residents and our staff. And I just don't want to jeopardize that at all.
So, I mean, I have a lot of ideas that are floating around, a lot of thoughts that are floating around in my head and as you're talking and, one of the things I think could be, so we're reopening the ARPA request process. And you said for there's no timeline right now, but probably about a month.
That's what we talked about in the meeting, but the notice
Okay.
that went out didn't have a time
Okay,
on. it.
so, I would be curious to hear what, more than a focus group of staff would say to what they feel would really be beneficial to them and before moving forward in one specific direction.
Okay.
And to give, them an opportunity to like, all of the staff to contribute to that and, I don't know, I
We
can
could send
see
it-
there being a lot of different, including like, something that both benefits the staff and residents in terms of, we have had some relational issues in the last few months. So perhaps there's a way that we can do something that benefits the staff and the residents and brings them together in a way that's maybe more productive and proactive for the community. So I think that's, if we're going in this different direction, I think there's some more thought that could go into what that might look like.
And I don't disagree with that suggestion, but I do want to say that what I have been proposing and discussing is specifically for our employees. And
Yes.
so partnering that with a joint resident kind of thing, I'm not sure achieves the goal that I'm looking for. It's them and the work that they did specifically for the town and acknowledging that specifically related to COVID. The rest of it and some of it has come from, this particular request, right? And like Jim said, people do want to say, I didn't get this, or I did get this, and so it can really lead to lots of harsh feelings, and people can say things that I think they don't, recognize how they affect others, or, our staff not willing to say to residents, why they may have been concerned with still working during COVID. So what I'll do is, we'll keep this request, our request still sits at ARPA until we, pull it back. And I'll put together a whole staff survey, so that they can kind of weigh in on things that they would like and get that back to you at our next meeting. Cool. Sound good?
Okay.
All right, so with that said, we're gonna hold off on moving it to town meeting until such time as we discuss. So that brings us to new business. Item A, the call of the town meeting, and why you won't see that on here. So I will move Town of Wellington notice and warning, special town meeting. The electors of the town of Wellington and all persons who are entitled to vote in town meeting on the matters mentioned in the following warning are hereby warned and notified to meet in town meeting at the Old Town Hall, 11 Common Road, Wellington at 7 p.m. on Monday, October 17th, 2022 for the following purpose. Item 1, Wellington electors to nominate and vote for Wellington electors to fill a vacancy on the Regional 19 Board of Education. Registered voters attending shall cast a certified paper ballot on the nominated names. Item 2, to see if the townspeople, on the recommendation of the Board of Finance, will authorize the appropriation of $40,000 from LoSiP to contract with Beta Group, Inc. to provide stormwater management and GIS mapping services, which are needed as part of the MS4 permitting process. Dated at Wellington, this 3rd day of October 2022, Wellington Board of Selectmen. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second discussion.
It's so I'm happy to see that it's on October 17th. And it doesn't conflict with anything else.
Oh, it sure does. We have a meeting that day.
We'll just talk fast.
No, chances are we won't be able to meet, but it's very,
We'll do our best to talk fast.
yeah. So my recommendation, Jim, actually will be for our meeting not to be held on that night because I can't, we can't guarantee what would need to be, we can limit the agenda to some point, but if we have a meeting and some business needs to come up. So my recommendation is I sacrificed our meeting because if you were to look at the calendar, I know there's been lots of discussion by folks about meetings on top of other meetings, and it happens and it's unavoidable. And there is a meeting every night that week with the exception of Friday. There's probably a reason why our town meetings aren't on Fridays. Most people aren't willing to attend. because they actually have other things they can, choose to do. And so,
I'm just looking at the calendar right now. I mean, the 25th, 26th and
yeah,
27th.
so I will tell you that I'm unavailable at that
Okay.
time.
Okay,
So,
okay.
I wouldn't typically do the town meeting, but I couldn't, back up. So, and it is part of my duty. So I am unavailable at those times. So it did limit us and we use the 2-week time frame. So typically we call a meeting, it would be, 2 weeks away. So we went through that week. We looked at some of the other meetings that were that night that we might have to, have a meeting at the same time, weigh what they might be doing. And just, so you know, that's what goes into every time we choose a date. It's not as though we pick a date that we think we like and we don't take into consideration. There is always consideration of the other meetings.
And it
and their
does
life.
always get harder in the winter time during budget process.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard all the
We all
time.
know
Right.
that.
A board could be holding a special meeting. Another board could suddenly decide they needed a special meeting on the 17th. And that is certainly their prerogative. So we pick a date we think will work for everyone and we move forward from there. So I will also mention, you asked about the process. I know we received into my office various recommendations for consideration for the Region 19 vacancy. This process is dictated by statute and it is voted on there. So any nominations would come there at that meeting.
So they'd be
from this
not-
board.
So they'd
They'd be nominated from the floor.
at
That
the
is
town
correct.
meeting. Okay.
Yes. So while we received 2 recommendations, there could potentially be more from the floor that day. So that's why this is without absent a name. Okay. Right. Any other questions? All right.
No, but one comment, you said appropriation of 40, on the second item, appropriation of $40,000 from LoSiP. So that's a grant we received, just for a point of clarification.
LoSiP is the local capital improvement plan,
Right.
and those are funds we receive from the state.
Right,
So we did discuss this at our last meeting.
just
Right,
mentioning it for those
So-
listening at home, they're wondering, what's this
Yeah.
movement of funds from a grant we
Yeah.
received?
and at the town meeting, there'll be actual discussion of the items. Our discussion is the meeting itself. Okay, any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor? Aye, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. So we do have several other items for a town meeting. But they need to go, either we're considering still, or they need to go to Board of Finance before they can come to us. And so the next one may have several items. I thought this one had several. It's smaller than I thought, but we do have a statutory requirement to move forward with the Region 19 process. With that said, that brings us to present to speak. Again, I ask you to state your name for the record. You can limit I ask you to limit your time to 2 minutes. The one person in the room, do you want to speak now? No, he still doesn't want to speak.
He had his
Cat
turn.
got his tongue. Anyone online, Mr. Tello?
Nick Tello, 49 Myrtle. First off, I want to say, Lisa mentioning bringing the town people in is a path that I respect. I think that's pretty cool to have that idea. I personally don't agree with giving bonuses or parties just solely for government workers, as Jim had touched upon briefly. Private sector, they had to go through the same difficulties during COVID, and many people didn't get bonuses and such. I'm a firm believer that all the ARPA money should be given to the town residents, not to government workers. It should be going into any improvements that may be needed. Also, in response earlier, I was given only one email, which was between town officials. I asked if there were any emails between the town and developers, seeing that the parties had failed to fill the FOIA request. So, the FOIA request was not filled. I don't understand where all emails is misunderstood or that have been used in an official conduct between the developers and associate parties is something misunderstood, but I mean, it's pretty clear. I would also like to state the conduct that was present in the meeting. Going into the meeting, I knew it was going to be Erica and Mike on the offense, which is why I asked to audio record the meeting. I was not expecting the town lawyer to be there, but she was there and stated in the beginning, no audio recording would be allowed, which I find interesting that they would not want what was said in the meeting to go out to public. So the meeting proceeded to be pretty much 3-on-1 attack. And if I asked to defend my points, then I was just interrupted. However, when I interrupted Mike, he stated he was just going to get up and leave. I kept on interrupting, which is, kind of unique. So needless to say, the rest of the meeting, I was constantly under attack and interrupted. At one point, they mentioned how.
Vitelli, you're at your 2 minutes. I'll ask you to wrap up your comments, please.
Okay, so at one point, Mike had, it was mentioned that Mike's address was put out there. So I just find it interesting that if we're concerned public workers' addresses are out there, then why are we stating our addresses if this is such a concern? I also just want to close that if anybody is to do harm or something, that is not my responsibility. And to try to use bully tactics to try to hush me up by threatening that I will be held accountable is inappropriate. And that's all I have to say for now.
Thank you. Mr. Marshall.
Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to comment briefly on my comments at the last meeting.
Can you identify yourself for the record, please?
Apologies, I forget sometimes.
you.
James Marshall, 46 Fisher Hill Road. I just wanted to touch on the comments I read in person at the last meeting related to a complaint about the conduct of the EDC. And there was some additional correspondence over the weekend between the chair of the EDC and myself. I'm disappointed to find that it wasn't noted or made mention of by the Board of Selectmen here as, part of correspondence received, or that you have decided not to take up any consideration of the validity of the complaints or made any attempt to, I guess, validate or provide any path of recourse for citizens making such a similar complaint. It seems like it's being ignored and has not been addressed. So I just ask that the Board of Selectmen at least, provide some guidance as to proper conduct of boards and commissions, or address my complaint specifically. Because as of yet, now it's been at least 2 weeks, but longer since the initial complaint was filed, and I have yet to see any correspondence or outreach from this commission. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Tulis.
Good evening, Ralph Tulis, 47 Village Hill Road. Hopefully I'm coming through okay.
You are.
Okay. Regarding Mr. Teller's request, FOIA request, if you would check the EDC minutes, February 9th, 2021, Mike D'Amato admitted sending a draft of the SDZ regulations to, and I quote, a couple of developers for critical input, end quote. So to say that there was no, and I don't know by what method he shared the draft of those regs. Commonly, right, I think for both Mike and many people, that could have been via email. Maybe it wasn't, I don't know, but I share a bit of Mr. Teller's concern here about the evolution of the SDC regulations. And that will come out at the next planning and zoning meeting. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else present to speak? Going once, going twice. Move forward. Good and welfare. Mobile food share is still every other Wednesday here at the town office building from 11 to 11:30. The next one will be next Wednesday, October 12th. As a reminder, it's open to all Wellington residents as well as any other residents from a surrounding town. Please continue to support our small businesses and restaurants if you can. The Parks and Rec Department and Human Services Department will be hosting a Halloween party at River Road Athletic Complex on Halloween, Monday, October 31st from 4 to 6 p.m. The PTA Trunk or Treat is October 28th, again at River Road Athletic Complex from 6:30 to 8:30, and folks are encouraged to contact the PTA for more information. Absentee ballot applications for the November 8th elections are now being accepted in the town clerk's office. Per statute, the ballots will become available on October 7th. DPW will be doing drainage work on Hakala Farms Road on this Thursday, October 6th, and the road will be closed from 7:30 to 2 p.m. and for information purposes, they've discussed with residents on that road access, so and make contingencies. So the next, our next meeting date is October 17th, barring the absolute need to meet, will most likely be canceling that due to the town meeting. We call for that meeting. So again, that includes attendance there and prep work there. So keep that in mind. Any good or welfare from either of you?
I'll just make one comment about planning and zoning business. If there's business before planning and zoning and it needs to go through public hearing first, I do think we should all, we always extend that courtesy to outside town entities and not discuss it until after it's gone through public hearing, or we discuss things at public hearing and planning and zoning. Mr. Marshall did present something before planning and zoning. I think it was in his right and purview to not expect it to be discussed in other places and let it until it had the full public hearing. I think it's a reasonable request. So
So,
that's just normal good
well,
etiquette.
I will say that
Anything else.
the EDC, on that note, Jim, I'll say the EDC is a non-regulatory board. And if they chose to take a position from their commission before the public hearing, the appropriate time for them to discuss that would be in their meeting. I was not at their meeting. I did not partake in the conversation. Mr. Marshall has concerns with how they conducted themselves during that meeting, and he sent a communication to Mr. Maloney. This board does not micromanage their discussion or tell them they are not what they may not discuss. And so I will say that multiple boards and commissions, Conservation Commission, the Parks and Rec Commission took up the discussion that was going before a public hearing and decided as a commission to come out and speak on that. And no one on this board had a problem with them speaking on that behalf. EDC had the same opportunity with that application. So with that, they were discussing an application that is available to the public to view, and whether or not they wanted to discuss that and have input on that at the public hearing. That is the appropriate thing for them to do. The manner by which they held that discussion, I think, is Mr. Marshall's issue, and he reached out to the chair of EDC to discuss that, and Mr. Maloney replied to him. And then there was another reply from Mr. Marshall to Mr. Maloney, by which we may have been copied, but the communications are between those parties. And so that is, where I stand on that. Again, I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with the manner by which the EDC conducted themselves. I think a resident took his concerns to them, and that is the appropriate place. If he has a concern with the way we conduct this board, we have discussions amongst this board about how we move. But these commissions, again, non-regulatory commissions, have the ability to, I think it would be inappropriate if we met about a public hearing item, as we, have some regulatory authority, although not over planning and zoning purposes, to meet, discuss it, and go to town meeting. We did not do that with this last most controversial topic, but we did, but others did. And that happened. EDC chose not to move anything forward to the public hearing. Parks and Rec chose to move something in a formal capacity, as did Conservation Commission. And so that does happen with those commissions. And that is the appropriate time for that board to decide there's an application that's going to have a public hearing. Do we want to speak at the public hearing? And what do we want to say? So I think that would be appropriate. And then they go to the public hearing and put their thoughts on the record. And that appears to me what was being done. Mr. Marshall happens to be the applicant in this case. So whether he may or may not want them to discuss it in a particular manner, I don't know. And I won't begin to speculate on, but it is not, in my opinion, for this board to manage the discussions at the Economic Development Commission or any other commission for that.
We're already past our agenda, so I don't know it's appropriate to have a discussion on at this point, but perhaps we can put it on an agenda for a future meeting to talk about the issue generally, about clarifying our roles and responsibilities with the commissions and other boards, and also clarifying the recourse for residents if they have a substantial concern that they would like somebody else other than the person that they have a concern with to address. So I do think it would be appropriate for there to be some conversation about if there's repeated concerns or something, and I'm not saying that that's the situation here, but if we are in a situation, there's repeated concerns about a commission or a board or something, there does need to be a place for residents to go to expect some action. So I think if we can maybe put that on an agenda for a future meeting, to have a conversation about that and clarify for ourselves and for the residents, how that happens and how that works. I think some of this issue could be remediated.
Sounds good.
I think that's a good idea.
All right, seeing no other business before us. He's on, I will make a motion to adjourn at 7:30 PM.
Second.
Second,
Seconded by Liza,
Gotcha.
the non-debatable matter, all those in favor?
I.
Aye. Motion carries. Good night.
Excuse me.